Cadet Lauren Price stood in the middle of the training room, her heart racing. Today was the day she would face the escape simulation, a test that many cadets dreaded. This simulation was famous for being tough, and many recruits had failed in the past. Lauren felt a mix of excitement and fear, but she was ready to prove herself. The room was large, with high walls and bright lights. A big screen showed the countdown timer ticking down from 30 minutes. Lauren glanced around at her fellow cadets, who were all looking nervous. Some were pacing, while others whispered to each other. They all knew what was at stake. If they could not escape in time, they would fail the test and possibly face trouble in their training. Captain Rick Dalton, a tall man with a serious face, stepped forward. He was the instructor for the simulation and known for his strict ways. He looked at each cadet, his eyes sharp and focused. "Listen up," he said. "This is not just a test of speed. It is a test of your ability to think and adapt. You have 30 minutes to escape. Do not underestimate the challenges you will face. Good luck." With that, the simulation began. The doors sealed shut with a loud clang and the countdown started. Lauren took a deep breath and focused. She remembered her training. She had practiced for this moment for weeks. She was determined not to let fear control her. The simulation was set on Carthos, a planet known for its extreme conditions. It was called a death world by many alien species. The gravity was heavy and the atmosphere was dangerous. Most aliens would struggle here, but Lauren felt a spark of confidence. She was from Earth, a place where survival was often a challenge. She knew how to push through. As she stepped into the corridor, Lauren noticed the flickering lights above her. The hall was narrow, with walls made of metal that felt cold to the touch. She moved quickly, her boots echoing on the hard floor. The sound of her footsteps mixed with the distant hum of machinery. Lauren kept her eyes open for any signs of danger. Suddenly, a loud noise echoed through the corridor. A security drone appeared, hovering in the air with its red lights flashing. It was a small, round machine with a menacing look. Lauren's heart raced as she realized it was heading straight for her. The drone emitted a warning beep, and she knew it was armed with a stun pulse. Most cadets would have run, but Lauren thought quickly. She spotted a heavy metal pipe lying on the ground nearby. Without thinking twice, she grabbed it and prepared for the drone's attack. As the drone approached, it fired a pulse of energy. Lauren ducked just in time and swung the pipe with all her strength. The metal hit the drone hard and it sparked before dropping to the ground. Lifeless, Lauren took a moment to catch her breath. She felt a rush of pride. She had done what others might not have. Using her instincts, she had taken down the drone. But she knew this was just the beginning. The simulation would only get harder from here. She continued down the corridor, looking for a way to escape the next obstacle. A terminal appeared on her left, flashing with information. It was locked, but Lauren remembered her training. Quickly assessed the situation. Using her skills, she managed to hack into the system. The screen flickered, and the door ahead of her unlocked with a satisfying beep. "Yes," she whispered to herself, pushing through the door. The next room was larger, filled with strange machinery and glowing panels. Lauren moved quickly, knowing the time was running out. She could hear the countdown ticking in her mind, reminding her that every second counted. As she moved deeper into the facility, the atmosphere changed. The air felt heavier, and the lights flickered more often. Lauren could feel the pressure building around her. She knew the simulation was designed to test her limits. She had to stay focused. Suddenly, she heard a loud crash behind her. Turning around, she saw another cadet, Mason Brooks, struggling to get free from a pile of debris. Panic filled his eyes as he called out for help. Lauren hesitated for a moment. She knew she needed to keep moving, but she also knew she could not leave him behind. "Hang on, Mason," she shouted, rushing back to him. The debris was heavy, and it looked like it would take a lot of strength to lift it. Lauren crouched down beside him, assessing the situation. Mason was trapped under a large metal beam, and she could see the fear on his face. With a deep breath, she gripped the beam with both hands. It was heavier than she expected, but she remembered her training. She had faced heavy challenges before. Summoning her strength, she pushed with all her might. The beam shifted slightly, and Mason's eyes widened in surprise. "Keep going," he urged. And with one final effort, Lauren lifted the beam enough for him to crawl out. They both gasped for breath as Mason freed himself. He looked at Lauren with gratitude, his expression changing from panic to relief. "Thanks. I thought I was done for," he said, brushing dirt off his uniform. "We need to keep moving," Lauren replied. Glancing back at the corridor, the time was ticking down, and they were still far from escaping together. They navigated the labyrinth of corridors, working as a team. They needed to be quick and smart. Lauren felt a sense of urgency driving her forward. She knew they were close, but the challenges seemed to multiply with every turn. As they reached another door, Lauren paused. "We can't go back now. We need to push through," she said, determination in her voice. Mason nodded, and they took a moment to catch their breath before moving forward. They were getting closer to the exit, but Lauren felt a sense of unease. The simulation was designed to test them, and she knew there would be more dangers ahead. She steeled herself, ready for whatever came next. With time running short, they pressed on, knowing that the clock was ticking down and their chance to escape was slipping away. Lauren and Mason stood at the door, their hearts racing. They knew they had to keep moving. The countdown timer was still ticking down, reminding them that time was running out. The door slid open with a hiss, and they stepped into a new room. This one was darker, and the air felt thicker. The walls were made of rough metal, and strange noises echoed around them. "Stay alert," Lauren said, glancing around. She could feel the tension in the air. This room was different, and she knew they had to be careful. As they moved forward, the lights flickered again, casting strange shadows on the walls. Suddenly, a loud mechanical voice filled the room. "Intruders detected. Prepare to engage." The voice was cold and robotic. Lauren's heart sank. They were not alone. From the shadows, two security drones emerged, their red lights flashing ominously. They hovered in the air, scanning the area. These drones were faster and more dangerous than the ones she had taken down before. She had to think quickly. "Mason, we need to find cover," she whispered urgently. Ducked behind a large crate, just as the drones started to move closer. The sound of their engines hummed in the air, and Lauren could see their weapons powering up. "Do you think we can take them out?" Mason asked, his voice trembling slightly. Lauren shook her head. "Not both at once. We need to split up, draw one away, while the other stays focused on me. Then we can take them down." Mason nodded, trusting her plan. "Okay, on three," he said, counting down quietly. 1, 2, 3. They both moved at the same time. Lauren ran to the left, drawing the attention of one drone. It shot a pulse of energy at her, but she ducked just in time. The pulse hit the wall behind her, leaving a burnt mark on the metal. The other drone focused on Mason, who was now trying to hide behind another crate. Lauren could see him through the gaps, and she felt a surge of determination. She had to protect her teammate. She grabbed a metal pipe from the ground and prepared for her next move. With a quick glance at Mason, Lauren shouted, "Now." Mason jumped from behind his crate, sprinting toward the drone that had targeted him. The drone turned to shoot at him, but Lauren was ready. She charged forward, swinging the pipe with all her strength. The metal struck the drone with a loud clang. It spun in the air, losing its balance, and crashed into the floor. Sparks flew as it struggled to regain control. Meanwhile, Mason had gotten close to the second drone. He had picked up a piece of debris and threw it at the drone, hitting it. Squarely, the drone turned its attention to him, giving Lauren a chance to finish off the first one. She delivered another blow to the disabled drone, and it fell silent. "Nice job," Mason yelled, grinning as he saw Lauren take down the first drone. "Now let's finish the other one," Lauren replied, feeling the adrenaline rush through her veins. They charged at the last drone together, working as a team. With quick movements, they dodged its attacks. Mason swung his debris again, and Lauren followed up with the pipe. They hit the drone from both sides. With one final strike, the drone fell to the ground, lifeless. Breathing heavily, they exchanged relieved glances. "It was close," Mason said, wiping sweat from his forehead. Yeah, but we did it, Lauren replied, feeling a sense of achievement. They had faced danger and come out on top. They moved through the now quiet room, looking for a way out. The walls were covered in strange symbols and markings, and the air felt electric. Lauren could sense that they were getting closer to the exit, but she also felt the weight of the ticking clock. Let's check that control panel, Mason suggested, pointing to a glowing screen on the far wall. They approached it cautiously, knowing it could be another trap. Lauren examined the panel. It looks like it controls the doors and maybe the security systems. If I can hack into it, we might find a way to escape. Do you think you can do it? Mason asked, watching as she examined the wires and buttons. I have to try, Lauren replied, pulling off her gloves and focusing on the task. She remembered her training. She had practiced hacking systems before, but this was different. The pressure was on, and time was slipping away. She started pressing buttons, trying to find the right combination. The screen flickered, showing lines of code that moved too fast for her to read. She took a deep breath and focused her mind, blocking out distractions. After a few tense moments, she found a series of buttons that seemed to respond. I think I'm getting somewhere, she said, her fingers flying over the controls. The screen flashed, showing a map of the facility. There's the exit, she pointed, feeling a rush of hope. We just need to get past this next set of doors. Suddenly an alarm blared and red lights started flashing. Warning, security breach detected. A mechanical voice shouted again. Oh no, we've triggered something, Mason said, panic creeping into his voice. Stay calm, Lauren said, pushing through the rising tension. We have to move fast. She quickly entered a few more commands, trying to override the security system. Finally, with a loud beep, the doors slid open, revealing a corridor that led to the exit. Let's go, Lauren shouted, and they raced down the hallway. The alarms echoed behind them, and Lauren could hear the sound of more drones activating. They had to hurry. The corridor was long and twisted, and Lauren felt her muscles burning as they ran. Mason was right beside her, his face set with determination. They could not let fear stop them now. As they reached the end of the corridor, Lauren saw a large door ahead, looked like the final barrier between them and freedom. She sprinted toward it, her heart pounding in her chest. When they reached the door, Lauren pressed her hands against the control panel beside it. She could hear the drones closing in, their mechanical sounds growing louder. Come on, she muttered, her fingers flying over the buttons. She could feel the pressure mounting, but she pushed it aside. This was not the time to give up. With a final beep, the door opened, and they dashed through just as the first drone appeared behind them. They stumbled into a large open area, filled with bright lights and a vast sky above them. The air was thick with tension, but they were free. We made it, Mason shouted, grinning from ear to ear. Yet, Lauren said, her eyes scanning the area. They still had to find a way to escape the simulation completely. But for now they had taken a huge step forward. With renewed hope, they prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead. They were in this together, and they would not back down. As Lauren and Mason stepped into the open area, they took a moment to catch their breath. The sky above them was a strange shade of purple, filled with clouds that seemed to swirl and shift. They had escaped the last room, but they knew they were not safe yet. The sound of alarms still echoed in the distance, reminding them that the simulation was far from over. Where do we go now? Mason asked, looking around. The open space was large, with several paths leading in different directions. Each path looked equally dark and mysterious. Lauren scanned the area, trying to make sense of their options. I think we should stick to the left path. It looks less traveled, she suggested, pointing to a narrow corridor that seemed to lead deeper into the facility. Mason nodded, trusting her judgment. Let's do it, he said, and they began to move quickly down the left path. The ground beneath them felt uneven, and the walls were covered in strange symbols that glowed faintly as they passed. Lauren couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, but she pushed the thought aside. They had to keep moving. As they walked, Lauren felt a surge of determination. They'd already faced so much together, and she was not going to let anything stop them now. The countdown timer was still ticking in her mind, but she refused to let it control her. Suddenly, they heard a low rumble coming from behind them. Lauren turned to see a massive stone door sliding shut, sealing off the path they had just come from. Her heart raced. They had made the right choice. There was no going back now. "Keep going," she urged, and they quickened their pace. The corridor twisted and turned, and the air grew thicker with every step. Lauren could feel the weight of the simulation pressing down on her shoulders, but she pushed through. After a few moments, they reached another door. This one was different. It was much larger and made of solid metal. Lauren approached the control panel, her fingers ready to work. But as she examined it, she saw that it was locked tight with a complex security system. "Can you hack it?" Mason asked, glancing nervously at the door. Lauren sighed, feeling the pressure rise again. "I'll try. But it looks more complicated than the last one." She focused on the panel, her heart racing. The screen lit up with lines of code flashing too quickly for her to read. She could hear the faint sounds of drones in the distance, getting closer. Time was running out. "Come on," she whispered to herself, her fingers dancing over the controls. She took a deep breath and began to type. Trying to remember the techniques she had learned during training, the screen flashed warnings as she worked. Sweat dripped down her forehead, but she kept going. She had to get them through this door. After what felt like an eternity, she finally found a sequence that seemed to work. The door let out a loud beep and began to open slowly. "Yes," Lauren exclaimed, feeling a rush of relief. But just as the door opened, a loud alarm sounded. The lights above them turned red, and the room was filled with a harsh glow. "Right, more drones," Mason shouted, backing away from the door. Lauren grabbed Mason's arm, pulling him through the opening just as the first drone appeared. They stumbled into the next room, which was much larger and filled with strange machines. The walls were lined with screens showing various parts of the facility. Lauren's eyes darted around, looking for a way out. "Which way?" Mason asked, his voice tight with fear. "We need to find another control panel," Lauren replied, scanning the area. "Maybe we can shut down the drones." They ran deeper into the room, dodging the machines that hummed and buzzed around them. The screens flickered, showing images of the corridors they had just passed through. Lauren could see the drones patrolling those areas, searching for them. There. She pointed to a large control panel at the far end of the room. It was surrounded by blinking lights and buttons. They raced toward it, their feet pounding against the metal floor. As they reached the panel, Lauren felt a surge of hope. "If I can shut down the drones, we might have a chance to escape," she said, her fingers moving quickly over the controls. Mason kept watch, glancing back at the entrance. He could hear the worry sounds of the drones getting closer. "Hurry." "Lauren," he urged, his voice filled with urgency. Lauren focused hard on the screen, trying to find the right commands. The alarms were still blaring, and the pressure was building in her chest. She could feel the sweat trickling down her back. As she typed, suddenly the panel flashed a warning. "Unauthorized access detected. Security measures activated." "Not good," Mason said, his eyes wide. "What does that mean?" "It means the drones are going to come after us even harder," Lauren replied, her heart racing. She had to think fast. Quickly scanned the screen, looking for a way to override the system. With a deep breath, she typed in a series of commands, hoping they would work. The screen blinked, and for a moment, Lauren thought she had failed. But then the alarm stopped, and the lights changed from red to green. "I did it," she shouted, feeling a wave of relief wash over her. "The drones are offline. Great. Now, let's move," Mason said, and they dashed away from the control panel, ready to find the exit. They moved quickly through the room, following a path that led to another door. As they approached, Lauren felt a sense of hope. We're getting closer to escaping the simulation. The door opened, revealing another corridor. This one was dark and narrow, with flickering lights above. Lauren could hear the distant sounds of machinery and the hum of the facility. "Do you think we're close?" Mason asked, glancing around nervously. "I hope so," Lauren replied, her voice steady. "We just have to keep pushing forward." As they walked down the dark corridor, Lauren felt the weight of the simulation pressing. On her, the air was thick, and she could sense the danger lurking in the shadows. But she refused to let fear take over. They had come too far to turn back now. Suddenly they heard a loud crash behind them. Lauren turned to see a wall of debris collapsing, blocking the path they had just come from. "That was close," Mason exclaimed, his eyes wide with shock. "Let's keep going," Lauren urged, pushing ahead. They reached another door at the end of the corridor. This one looked more secure, with a heavy lock and reinforced metal. "Another control panel," she said, her heart racing at the thought of hacking it again.
Oh.
"I'll see if I can get it open." As she approached the panel, she felt the urgency grow. They needed to escape before more obstacles appeared. With her fingers ready, she began to work on the controls, hoping for another chance to open the way forward. The screen flickered, and Lauren felt a mix of hope and fear. She had to get them through this door. With determination, she continued typing, knowing that every second counted. Lauren stood in front of the control panel, feeling the pressure mount. The heavy door loomed before her, and she knew they had to get through it quickly. The alarms from the simulation still echoed in her ears, a constant reminder that time was running out. Come on," she whispered to herself, her fingers moving quickly over the buttons. The screen lit up, flashing with lines of code that seemed to swirl and dance. She focused hard, trying to ignore the noise and the weight of the situation. Mason kept watch behind her, glancing nervously at the corridor. He could hear mechanical sounds getting closer. "Hurry, Lauren," he urged, his voice tight with urgency. "Trying," Lauren replied, feeling the sweat trickle down her back. She could feel the tension building around them. With each passing second, the danger grew. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she found the right sequence of commands. The screen beeped loudly, and the heavy door began to slide open. "Yes!" she shouted, a rush of relief flooding her. But just as the door opened, a loud crash echoed from the corridor behind them. "We need to move," Mason yelled, and they dashed. Through the opening, just as debris fell from the ceiling, they stumbled into a new room, breathless and wide-eyed. This room was much larger than the others, filled with strange machinery and bright lights. The walls were lined with screens displaying various parts of the facility. Lauren felt a mix of awe and fear as she looked around. "This place is huge," Mason said, his voice filled with wonder. "What do you think it does?" "I don't know, but we need to find a way out," Lauren replied, her mind racing. She could see several doors leading out of the room. She had no idea which one to choose. They moved cautiously, staying close together. The screens showed images of different rooms and corridors, and Lauren felt a sense of unease as she realized how complex this facility was. "Let's check that door," Mason suggested, pointing to a smaller door on the left. They approached it, but just as Lauren reached for the handle, a loud alarm blared again. "Not again." Mason groaned, looking around. Before they could react, several security drones appeared from hidden compartments in the walls. Their red lights flashed, and they moved toward Lauren and Mason with alarming speed. "Run!" Lauren shouted, and they took off down the room, dodging the drones that buzzed around them. The drones fired stun pulses, and Lauren felt the air crackle with energy as she ducked and weaved between the machines. Mason ran beside her, his face full of determination. It faced danger before, but this felt different. "Where do we go?" Mason yelled, his voice rising above the chaos. "There." Lauren pointed to a door at the far end of the room. "We can get through there." They sprinted toward the door, adrenaline pumping through their veins. The drones were gaining on them, and Lauren could hear their engines humming ominously. Just as they reached the door, Lauren slammed her hand against the control panel. The door slid open and they rushed through just in time. They stumbled into another corridor, panting heavily. The sounds of the drones faded behind them, but they knew they could not rest yet. "That was too close," Mason said, trying to catch his breath. "Yeah, but we made it," Lauren replied, feeling a sense of victory. They had escaped the drones, but they still had to find a way out of the simulation completely. The corridor was dark, with flickering lights overhead. Lauren felt uneasy as they moved forward. The walls seemed to close in around them, and the air felt heavy. "Do you think we're close to the exit?" Mason asked, glancing around nervously. I hope so, Lauren said, trying to sound confident. We just need to keep going. They walked in silence, listening to the sounds of the facility around them. Lauren could hear the hum of machinery and the distant beeping of alarms. It felt like the entire place was alive. Watching them as they moved deeper into the unknown, suddenly they reached another door. This one was different, was reinforced with metal and had a complex locking mechanism. Lauren stepped forward, her heart pounding. Let me try, she said, pulling off her gloves. She approached the control panel, ready to work her magic again. As she examined the panel, she felt a surge of determination. She had to get them through this door. With her fingers poised over the controls, she took a deep breath and began typing. The screen lit up, showing rows of code and options. Lauren focused, trying to find the correct commands. She could feel the pressure building again, but she pushed. It asides, you think this door will open? Mason asked, watching her carefully. It has to, Lauren replied, her voice steady. We can't turn back now. As she worked, she heard the sound of footsteps approaching from the corridor behind them. Her heart raced. They had to hurry. Just then, the screen flashed a warning. Unauthorized access detected. Security measures activated. Not good, Mason exclaimed, his eyes wide with fear. Stay calm, Lauren said, her voice firm. I can do this. She focused on the screen, her fingers flying over the buttons. Finally, after a few tense moments, the door began to open with a loud hiss. Lauren felt a rush of relief wash over her, but she knew they had to act quickly. Let's go, she shouted, and they rushed through the opening. The new room was filled with shadows, and Lauren felt a chill run down her spine. It was much darker than the previous rooms, with only a few flickering lights illuminating the space. Where are we? Mason asked, his voice low. Not sure, Lauren replied, scanning the area. The room was empty, except for a few crates and strange machinery. Suddenly, a loud noise echoed from the far side of the room. Lauren turned to see a large creature emerging from the shadows. It was unlike anything she had ever seen before, with sharp claws and glowing eyes. Run, she shouted, grabbing Mason's arm. They sprinted toward the far wall, trying to escape the creature that was now chasing them. The creature let out a deafening roar, and Lauren felt a wave of fear wash over her. They had come too far to let this be the end. They reached the far wall, but there was nowhere to hide. Lauren spotted a small opening near the ceiling. We can climb up, she yelled, pointing to it. Let's go, Mason shouted, and they both jumped to grab the edge of the opening. With a burst of strength, they pulled themselves up just as the creature lunged at them. Lauren felt her heart pounding as they climbed into the small space. They scrambled to get inside, barely escaping the creature's claws. Once they were inside, they realized they were in a narrow vent system. It was dark and cramped, but they were safe for now. Do you think it will follow us? Mason asked, breathing heavily. I hope not, Lauren replied, her voice shaky. But we can't stay here for long. They crawled through the vent, trying to keep quiet. The sound of their breathing echoed in the small space, and Lauren could feel the tension building. Again. Where do you think this leads? Mason asked, glancing at her. I have no idea, Lauren admitted. But it has to lead somewhere. We just have to keep moving. They continued crawling, feeling the cool metal beneath them. The vent twisted and turned, and Lauren felt disoriented. She had no idea how far they had come, or how much longer they had to go. Finally, they reached another vent opening. Lauren peered out and saw a large room filled with bright lights and strange machinery. We can get out here, she whispered, and they carefully climbed out of the vent. They landed softly on the ground, and Lauren quickly looked around. The room seemed deserted, but she could hear sounds coming from beyond another door on the far side. This way, she said, leading Mason toward the door. They approached cautiously, knowing they had to be careful. As they reached the door, Lauren felt a surge of hope. They were getting closer to escaping the simulation with determination. She stepped forward to open the door. As Lauren and Mason stood before the door, they felt a mix of hope and fear. This could be their way out of the simulation, but they knew they had to be careful. The sounds of the facility buzzed around them, and the pressure of time weighed heavily on their shoulders. "Are you ready?" Lauren asked, glancing at Mason. He nodded, determination shining in his eyes. "Let's do this," he replied, clenching his fists. Lauren reached for the door handle and pulled it open slowly. The door creaked as it swung wide, revealing a large room filled with bright lights and advanced technology. The walls were lined with screens displaying information, and in the center of the room stood a massive control panel. "This looks important," Mason said, stepping inside. "I bet it controls the whole facility." "Maybe it can help us escape," Lauren replied, moving toward the control panel. She could feel her heart racing as she approached it. This was their chance. The panel was complex, with buttons and screens flashing different colors. Lauren took a deep breath and began to examine it. "I need to find a way to shut down the simulation," she said, her mind racing. "Do you think you can do it?" Mason asked, looking nervous. "I have to try," Lauren replied, focusing her attention on the panel. She started pressing buttons, trying to decipher the commands. The screens flickered with information, but it was hard to make sense of it all. Suddenly, the lights in the room changed and a voice filled the air. "Warning. Unauthorized access detected. Security measures activated." Lauren's heart sank. "We need to hurry," she said, her fingers moving faster on the controls. She could hear the sound of drones activating in the distance, and she knew they had limited time. "Come on, Lauren. You can do this," Mason encouraged, glancing back at the door. Lauren concentrated, trying to block out the noise. She scanned the screen for any option that could help them. After a few moments, she found a series of commands that seemed promising. "Here goes nothing," she muttered, typing quickly. The screen flashed, and a series of warnings appeared. "Simulation override. In progress," it displayed. "Yes, it's working," Lauren shouted, feeling a rush of excitement. But just as she thought they were close, the screen went dark, and an error message appeared. "Error. Access denied," it said, and Lauren's heart dropped. "What happened?" Mason asked, his voice tense. "I don't know," Lauren replied, feeling frustration bubble inside her. "I need to find another way." Just then, the door behind them slammed shut, sealing them inside the room. The sound echoed ominously, and they both turned to see the drones flying in from the corridors. "We're trapped," Mason exclaimed, panic rising in his voice. "Not yet," Lauren said, her mind racing. "We need to find another way out." She quickly glanced around the room, searching for an exit. In the corner, she noticed a small door that looked different from the others. It was partially hidden behind a large machine. "Over there," Lauren pointed. "Let's check that door." They dashed toward it, but the drones were closing in fast. Lauren could hear their buzzing engines and see their red lights flashing. Had to act quickly as they reached the small door. Lauren pulled on the handle. It was locked tight. "I need a moment," she said, glancing back at Mason. He nodded, keeping watch. "Hurry, they're almost here." Lauren took a deep breath and focused on the door. She remembered the techniques she had learned during training. With determination, she began to work on the lock, her fingers moving quickly. The sound of the drones grew louder, and Lauren could feel the tension in the air. Come on," she whispered, pushing herself to work faster. Finally, with a click, the lock released. "Got it," Lauren exclaimed, pushing the door open just as the first drone entered the room. They stumbled through the door and into a narrow corridor. The sound of the drones echoed behind them, and they ran as fast as they could. The corridor twisted and turned, and Lauren felt a rush of adrenaline. They were close now. They could almost taste freedom. As they ran, Lauren could hear the drones closing in, their buzzing growing louder. She pushed herself to run faster, urging Mason to keep up. "Where do we go?" Mason asked, glancing around. "I don't know," Lauren admitted, her mind racing. "We need to find an exit." They turned a corner and saw another door at the end of the corridor there, Lauren shouted, pointing ahead. They sprinted toward the door, but as they reached it, they saw it was sealed shut. Panic surged through Lauren. "No, not now." "Can you open it?" Mason asked, looking worried. "I'll try," Lauren replied, stepping up to the control panel beside the door. "Shh, She started typing frantically, hoping she could unlock it in time. The screen flickered and warnings flashed as she worked. Come on, come on, she urged, feeling the pressure of the approaching drones suddenly. The drones appeared at the end of the corridor, their red lights flashing ominously. We need to move, Mason shouted. Just then, the door let out a loud beep and began to slide. Open, yes, Lauren shouted, relief flooding through her. They rushed through the opening just as the drones fired their stun pulses. The air crackled with energy, and Lauren felt a pulse whiz past her head. They stumbled into a large open space, filled with bright lights and advanced technology. The atmosphere felt different here, and Lauren could sense they were close to the exit. Where do we go now? Mason asked, looking around. Lauren spotted a large set of doors at the far end of the room. There, that must be the exit, she exclaimed, pointing. They dashed toward the doors, their hearts racing. As they approached, Lauren felt a surge of hope. They were almost free. But as they reached the doors, they saw that they were locked tight. Not again, Mason groaned, frustration evident in his voice. Let me try, Lauren said, stepping forward. She approached the control panel, her fingers ready to work. But just as she began typing, the alarms blared again. Warning, unauthorized. Access detected. The voice echoed through the room. Come on, Lauren, Mason urged, glancing back at the entrance. With determination, Lauren focused on the panel. She had one last chance to get them out. Her fingers flew over the controls as she typed, searching for the right commands. The screen flashed with warnings, and Lauren felt the pressure building. Please work, she whispered to herself, feeling the weight of the situation. Finally, with a loud beep, the doors began to slide open. Yes, Lauren shouted, a rush of relief washing over her. But just as they were about to step through, a massive shadow loomed behind them. The creature they had seen earlier had followed them into the room. Run, Lauren shouted, grabbing Mason's arm. They sprinted through the doors just as the creature lunged at them. They stumbled into a new corridor, and the doors slammed shut behind them. The sound of the creature crashing against the door echoed in the narrow space. Keep going, Lauren urged, pushing forward. They ran as fast as they could, not looking back. The corridor twisted and turned, and Lauren could hear the sounds of the facility growing quieter. They were getting closer to freedom. Finally, they reached a large door at the end of the corridor. Lauren stepped forward, her heart pounding. This has to be it, she said, hoping with all her might. She approached the control panel, her hands shaking with anticipation. Just one more time, she whispered, typing quickly. The screen lit up, and a series of commands appeared. After a few tense moments, the panel beeped, and the door began to open. Yes, Lauren shouted, feeling a wave of excitement. As the door opened wide, they stepped through and into the bright light of the outside world. Fresh air filled their lungs, and they felt the warmth of the sun on their faces. They had made it. They had escaped the simulation. Lauren and Mason stood outside, breathless and overwhelmed with joy. They looked at each other, grinning from ear to ear. They had faced danger and uncertainty, but they had come out stronger. That was the craziest thing I've ever done, Mason said, still catching his breath. Me too, Lauren replied, feeling a sense of pride. They had proven themselves in a place where many had failed. As they walked away from the facility, they knew they had each other's backs. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. And as they stepped into the bright future, they were ready to show the galaxy what they were truly capable of.